And welcome into the show, ladies and gentlemen. It's the big hit right here on IUP-TV. I'm your host, Josh Hill. Today we will look to achieve greatness on our show, and we will begin by talking about the Major League Baseball season, examine some new rule changes that have been implemented in Major League Baseball, and ask about some of the Pittsburgh Pirates' most recent struggles and see if they can break out of that slump. And then we will talk about the Masters tournament in the PGA Tour. We'll recap the tournament and look at the future of the golf game and where it stands right now. And then it's the NBAs. We ask if the Indiana Pacers deserve a playoff spot after Paul George has made his return. Then it's our NHL playoff previews. We close out the show on the ice, recapping every first-round matchup and predicting the Stanley Cup winner. So, ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts, buckle up. It's going to be a great ride here on The Big Hit. And welcome into the Big Hit, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to talk some baseball here as opening day has come and gone. We are in full swing with baseball season, and it's our call to the bullpen with Sarah Moltz and Andrew Friend. Guys, let's go ahead and begin our baseball discussion talking about A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez. Solid start to the 2015 season for A-Rod. 6 home runs shy of surpassing Willie Mays for number 4 on the all-time home run list. How do you think the Yankees will handle this situation, Major League Baseball and the fans, if or when Alex Rodriguez passes Willie Mays?
So in 2007, that's when Rodriguez signed with the Yankees. And when signing, he had a separate marketing contract, which included milestone bonuses with an additional $6 million with each player that he surpasses. So basically, the Yankees are going to be owing Rodriguez a bunch of money. With saying that, the Yankees franchise is very careful with when it comes to marketing milestones. And in this case, I do not believe that the Yankees at all are going to be acknowledging his milestone at all. So basically, the Yankees really don't care that much about Rodriguez's milestone, even though I know that he will be able to achieve it. That's nothing to be talked about, but the Yankees just don't care, and in that case, I just don't think that the organization is behind him at all. Therefore, the fans won't be behind him at all. I just think the whole situation is awkward. Mm-hmm. And it was also mentioned that in the Yankees' press notes of the upcoming milestones, Rodriguez wasn't even mentioned. So therefore, that's basically just telling you that they don't really care that much. So like I said before, if the organization doesn't really care, I don't think the fans are going to make that big of a deal of it. I think it'll be mentioned. I just don't think they're going to make it a huge deal. Like I said, Rodriguez will definitely be able to achieve it. I know he's been doing well, but it's just kind of awkward.
Yeah, awkward. Yeah, awkward to say the least. The Yankees, as you mentioned, yeah, they did sign that contract, $6 million for whenever he gets to that milestone. However, they are not going to even acknowledge the fact that he's going to surpass Willie Mays, because he is inevitably going to surpass him. And I believe that's right. The man used performance-enhancing drugs, a.k.a. cheating. Therefore, he deserves no respect, no attention, nothing for what he has done. He is less than trash to this whole entire MLB organization. That's why I agree with exactly what you said. Nobody's going to pay it mind. The fans, they're going to have mixed emotions.
Right.
And that's basically all I have to say about that.
But the thing is, too, sorry to interrupt, is that it's kind of weird that he's in the starting line, though. So it's kind of like then the Yankees don't really want to acknowledge him, but he's in the starting line, which makes no sense.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like they don't really know what to do. It's like we said, an awkward situation with Rodriguez. We don't really know what's going to happen. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the whole salary attribution things.
And exactly, moving on from some milestone news from Alex Rodriguez to some news that is just taking place this year in the major leagues. The MLB has made a rule change looking to speed up the game. Players need to keep 1 foot in the batter's box. Each ballpark has timers that count down time in between innings, trying to speed the game up, and it's working according to the stats. The games are about 8 minutes shorter compared to last year at this point in the year. So do you believe they should continue to implement this rule to help speed up the game, or was it fine the way it is?
No, I definitely think this is something that they should keep. I thought it was a great addition to the game. It kept it natural. They're not really changing anything about the game itself, just the speed. No offense, as much as I love baseball, it can be a little bit boring. You know, once a batter gets on the mound and the pitcher, you know, by the time that happens, it kind of takes about 5 or 10 minutes, and you're kind of just sitting there like, okay, can we get this ball rolling? So couple of things I wanted to point out with some of the changes that they had. For example, the batter's box, talking about the batter's box, the batter must keep at least 1 foot in the batter's box at all time. There's no pitch intentional walks. There's a bunch of different stuff, but I think that the most important thing is that now most games have averaged about, I think they said about 2 hours and 50-something minutes. Where last season's games are about 3 hours and 2 minutes. So, like you said, cutting about 8 minutes off doesn't seem like a lot of time, but I think it's something that's definitely helping the game. Like I said, it's making it go a little bit faster, which I don't have a problem with. I think it's a great addition.
Yeah, exactly. And the great thing about the new rules that have been implemented in is it doesn't take away from the game,
right,
which is great. Just speeding up the time between innings. That's great. I love what they're doing with it. I couldn't agree more with how they're doing it.
Yeah, and games on pace to be shorter now for the first time since 2011. Games in 2011 were the last time games played 2 hours and 55 minutes or under. Games about on pace for that. Talk about speeding things up. Let's talk about Adrian Gonzalez here. 609 batting average, 5 home runs. Guys, what do you make of his performance this year? Pretty good, right?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. I just want to see what he does next.
Yeah, definitely. He's having a great time, and hopefully he keeps it up.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's move on and talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates a little bit here. Andrew McCutchen, Josh Harrison, two guys that have stumbled out of the gates a bit, but they were trending in the right direction after the Pirates' home opener against the Detroit Tigers. Should the team be concerned about their performances through the opening part of the season?
I really don't think the team has much to worry about with them. Those players are both star players. They know what they're doing. Everyone has rocky starts. Everyone has bad starts. Like I said, it happens. It's baseball. And you know what? It's really hard to predict what's going to happen when it's only 7 games deep. It's like saying in this, like going with football a little bit. The team wins 3 or 4 games straight. Oh, they're going to the Super Bowl. How are you going to know that? You know, they're off to a great. They're off to a rocky start. Doesn't mean anything. McCutchen had about 83 RBIs and 25 home runs, and Harrison had about 13 home runs and 52 RBIs last season. I think they're going to do great things this season for the Pirates. If anything, I think that their rotations need something they need to work on. They don't have their 5th starters indefinite for the team, for the starting lineup. So I think that that's more important than just worrying about those 2 key players.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, there are 162 games. And we're on game number 7.
Exactly.
Not to point out anybody, but Pittsburgh fans love to jump the gun early, all the time. And we just need to settle down, Pittsburgh fans. We're going to pick it up. Don't worry. McCutchen and Harrison, it's nothing to worry about right now. If it was midseason it was like this, yes, then I'd be worrying.
Right, I agree.
But right now, just cool it down. We're going to be all right.
Yeah, no question about it. Josh Harrison kind of dispelled those rumors that he was struggling after signing that 4-year deal with one swing of the bat. The first swing he took at PNC Park this year, a home run for Josh Harrison and Andrew McCutchen. Maybe the injuries could be a little bit of a concern. He's been in and out of the lineup. Just got to get him back to form, get him healthy. Pirates have as good a chance as anybody. So that's our baseball talk here today, guys. It was a great discussion here with Sarah Moltz, Andrew Friend. We'll take a break, come back, and discuss the 2015 Masters Tournament in the PGA Tour. We'll be back here on The Big Hit.
Out of all the bird teams in the NFL, I really like the Cardinals. The Seahawks and the Falcons, oh, no chance.
If it were up to me, I would eliminate all bird mascots altogether. Like, none. No more. I'm over it. It's not even that great or a scary mascot. It's not that impressive. It really bugs me that these teams have these type of bird mascots. Like, what is a bird? What's the point of it? I don't get it. I go fly around into a tree. I don't understand it. It just makes no sense to me that a team will have.
And welcome back into The Big Hit, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to talk some golf here, coming live from a place where I spend a lot of time out on the golf course. It is in the bunker. And joining us for this golf segment, Kyle Condor and Vaughn Delzell. Guys, let's recap the Masters and begin with Tiger Woods. Finished 17th at the Masters. Pretty good performance for Tiger. Left out of the top 100 in the world golf rankings. Do you think he deserves a better ranking after the performance he had at the Masters at Augusta.
Yeah, I definitely think he deserves a better ranking. And Josh, I just wanted to say I spend a lot of time in the bunker as well, but Tiger Woods does not. Of course, he's not as good as he used to be, but he's definitely not outside of the top 100 in my opinion. I think the official golf rankings, I think they let his attitude get the best of their decision. There's no way he's not even top 50 in my opinion, and his performance at the Masters proved that. He finished 17th. He put on a very good performance until the final day. He was in the discussion of being someone who could be the runner-up. Of course, Jordan Spieth ran away with it. We'll talk about that later. But Tiger Woods is definitely a top 100 golfer, and he might be the best golfer of all time. So there's no way he should be outside of the top 100 under 40 years old, in my opinion.
Yeah, as of today, the rankings they came back up, and Tiger Woods moved up to 101, so he's still right outside the top 100. But I mean, he shot pretty well until the last day, like you said. He shot a 5 under. He was in the top 10 for some point in time, but he just couldn't finish off strong. His consistency was well the first 3 days, but the last day his focus seemed to shift and change, and he kind of knew that it was too far out of reach for him to finish in the top 5 or even finish number 1 because, as you said, Jordan Spieth just ran away with the contest that day.
Yeah, it looks like Tiger Woods finally got his short game back, and that was something he was kind of lacking before a couple of months ago. If he was in a bunker, he was not going to get out for a long time. So his short game has been one of his staples. Looks like he's back to form on that. But you mentioned Jordan Spieth. Let's talk about him. At just 21 years old, Jordan Spieth fought off many of golf's elite: Rory McIlroy, Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, all in the mix for this Masters tournament. But the Texan was the second youngest golfer to ever win the green jacket. He was a wire-to-wire winner, the first in nearly 40 years. Got a lot of praise from some of the main legends in the game, a lot of respect from his peers as well. So is Jordan Spieth the next golf superstar in the making right now?
Yeah, I think he definitely just became a superstar. And you mentioned that he fought off a lot of those elite golfers. Well, he's one of them now, and there's no doubt about that. It proves because he got respect from a lot of the great golfers out there, including Phil Mickelson, Jack Nicklaus, and some of those guys. Jordan Spieth's performance was incredible. He was so poised. You saw it the entire Masters tournament from day one. Realistically, he just ran away with it. Like I said earlier, he's incredible. And I think he's definitely a superstar in the making. And if he could continue to do this well, I think he could be a legend someday, realistically. And he just needs to keep the same attitude that he's had throughout the early parts of his career if he wants to continue to perform the way he's been.
Yeah, I agree completely. A lot of golf analysts are calling him the next Tiger Woods, and I think that's pretty fair to say. I mean, he moved up. We just talked about rankings. He moved up to number 2 in the world now behind Rory McIlroy. So, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that he's a superstar. He only did 1 year at Texas and went pro, so it shows you how well he really was in the golf game at a young age. And 21 years old, I mean, there's so much more to come from the guy, and I can't wait to watch him golf more because he can win a lot more Masters.
Yeah, a lot of people are pegging this as a win, not just for Jordan Spieth, but for American golf in general. And there's a lot of people really relating to him. One of the main things I like about Jordan Spieth, you can see his level of investment out on the course. You kind of feel every shot. You ride the emotional roller coaster with Jordan Spieth, and that's what a lot of people identified with. Nice run for him at the Masters. But looking at golf as a whole, for the first time in a while, no clear-cut group of superstars in the golf game. So my question to you to close out our Masters discussion here today, if you had to pick 2 golfers to watch go at it in the final day of a major, who would you choose and why?
I'm going to go right back to talking about the 2 guys we just spoke about, and that's the old school versus the new school, Tiger versus Jordan Spieth. I would love to see these 2 go head-to-head, maybe be the final 2 in any major this summer. It would be very cool to see how well Jordan Spieth handles himself around a guy like Tiger Woods, who does not have the poise that Spieth has. Obviously, Tiger is very outspoken on TV, on the course in general. He definitely is not afraid to show his emotions, whereas Jordan Spieth is a guy who's more reserved. You almost wonder if Tiger would bring the worst out of Jordan Spieth just by showing his attitude in front of him and things like that. And of course, just seeing those 2 superstars go at it, because in my opinion, Tiger is still a superstar in the game and he's a legend against Jordan Spieth. That'd be fun to watch for sure. I hope we can see that sometime before Tiger completely is, irrelevant.
Yeah, thinking about this question, that was my second choice to go with because I do love Tiger Woods. He has been the face of golf for a very long time. But Jordan Spieth, I would love to watch him go against Rory McIlroy, the 1 and 2, because I feel as if they are the 2 best golfers and they're ranked 1 and 2 in the world. So why not see the best 2 go at it? You'd like to see the 2 best basketball players go one-on-one, the 2 best receivers and corners go against each other. So I'd have to say the 2 best golfers, but I would love Tiger Woods and Spieth, and I think that they would bring the best out of each other in that competition.
Yeah, certainly plenty of choices to choose from, but what a great golf discussion it was. I say that conversation was right on par here in the bunker with Kyle Condor and Vaughn Dalzell. We'll take a break, come back with some NBA talk here on The Big Hit. So guys, with the tournament coming up, what are IUP's chances this year?
I think they have a really good chance because the PSAC is not that strong compared to IUP. IUP moves the ball a lot quicker than most teams. They're very well-rounded. They've been playing together for a while. They've got a lot of big-time transfers. So I think that they have the edge over most of their opponents simply because they have experience. Experience gives you the edge any day of the week. So that's definitely why I think they can win the PSAC tournament for sure. What do you think, Norm?
Welcome back into the show, ladies and gentlemen, as they toss it on to us here for our NBA segment here as we crash the boards with Vincent Lowry and Darnell Turner. Guys, let's go ahead and begin once again in the state of Indiana with the Indiana Pacers. 37-43 on the year. They've gone 4-0 since Paul George returned to action on April 5th, right on the cusp of making that Eastern Conference playoff race. 2 games remaining. Washington on Tuesday, then the season finale against Memphis. Do the Pacers deserve a spot in the playoffs?
Oh yes, without a doubt. Actually, with Paul George coming back, that will also give him the confidence, pulling his team through, being a team leader. And also, the Pacers have also had one of the best records in the NBA since February.
Yeah, do they deserve to make the playoffs? I don't know about that. You know, everybody in the East after the 5th seed is just bad. But you know, you see what Paul George does for that team, him coming back. You see, like, if he was there the whole year, how they would have played. So tough 2 games, you know, we'll see if they get in. They're in position, so it's up to them.
Yeah, and a lot of people think a team under 500 shouldn't make the playoffs. Even if they win these 2 games, they'll be sitting at 39-43. So do they deserve a spot in the playoffs? Paul George's marketability certainly helps, so we'll see what the Pacers are able to do. Let's move to the West and talk about Russell Westbrook. That's a hard name to say for me, but I got it right that time. He scored 54 points, a career high, in another losing effort for the Oklahoma City Thunder on Sunday. They currently have the same record as the 8th-seeded Pelicans in the Western Conference, but due to the tiebreaker rules, they are not in if the season were to end today. Do you believe that Russell Westbrook's performances have hurt this team more than they've helped it? It's kind of been all about him. He's been a bit of a one-man band, so to speak.
I definitely think that it has definitely hurt the team more than it has helped it. If anything, it has helped improve his individual performances with his accolades. We see that he is now an individual player, that he's a great individual player, but now we need to see why he's an individual player and actually include the team and see how well he can work with the team that he has around him.
I think it's hard to say that he's hurt the team. You know, without Kevin Durant, without Serge Ibaka, he's doing the best that he can. Yeah. The numbers he's putting up, and there's not much after him. If they're second best player in his canner, he's played well since he's come over with the trade, but after that, there's not much help for Russell, and he has to do it all. And this team wouldn't even be in this position if it wasn't for him.
Yeah, Russell Westbrook averaging 28 points per game this season, over 8 assists per game as well. But let's move on to a topic that a lot of people are talking about here in basketball, because it was nothing short of a mass exodus in Lexington as 7 players from Kentucky left their 38-1 team for the NBA. Probably would have been 8 if Alex Poythress would have been healthy the entire season as well. This is something that people really predicted to happen. A lot of people from Kentucky leaving. So do you think this is hurting or helping college basketball in the NBA with all these guys moving on to the next level?
I believe that it definitely has helped the NBA by also getting like some more talent to see how well these guys will do individually on different teams, to see if they really can work by themselves and without like each other, to support each other. And also it'll also helps college basketball just to see like more competition, what team will come out on top and what team will come out as number 1 as the preseason comes for next year.
Yeah, it hurts in some ways, and then in some ways it helps. You know, you look at some of these young kids that come out their first year, and then they have a rough transition to the NBA. I think staying in school for an extra few years would help them, but then again, having a great year that they had their freshman year, passing up that big money into the draft, I don't think they can pass up on that. It's a big time opportunity.
Definitely.
So it hurts a little bit, but with all the McDonald All-Americans, there are players every year, so it doesn't hurt that much.
Yeah, when you look at this Kentucky class, there may have been only 3 guys that could be even maybe taking a risk. The rest of them seem like clear lottery picks. So you look at the Harrisons and maybe Dakari Johnson. The stock could have been higher if they came back to school, but like you said, hard to pass up all that money. So that will do it here. We'll leave it here. Talking some NBA basketball. We'll take a break, come back, and make the quest for Lord Stanley as we preview the NHL playoffs, ladies and gentlemen. It's coming up on the other side of the studio when we return here on The Big Hit. And hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into our NHL playoff preview. It is the best time of year as teams really look to achieve excellence now at this time of year. One team will be left raising the Stanley Cup high above their heads. Everybody else will be looking at what could have been. And we've got a great crew of analysts here. They really know hockey. Mike Gosnell, Ben Snyder, Sean Fritz. Guys, let's start in the Eastern Conference and look at the matchup between the New York Rangers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Penguins get into the playoffs on the very last day of the season after defeating Buffalo. Really tough month for Pittsburgh. New York, on the other hand, the reigning President's Trophy winners and the defending Eastern Conference champions. So let's look at this matchup. Can the Penguins defeat the Rangers, or will the reigning President's Trophy winners and defending Eastern Conference champions come out on top of the Penguins for a second year in a row?
The Penguins can absolutely beat the New York Rangers. They have the 2 best players in the world, if you want to look at it like that. It's going to be interesting to see what now getting healthy defense does for the Penguins. Christian Ehrhoff's getting back to game speed. I believe Derek Pouliot's close to coming back. They just called up Brian Dumoulin and Scott Harrington just to back them up. They're going to be the Black Aces in the playoffs. And I absolutely believe that the Rangers can falter in the first round. It's going to be difficult. New York's really at full health aside from Kevin Kline. He will not play game 1, but they just haven't missed a beat, especially with Henrik Lundqvist kept coming back. They lost 2 straight after that, but they just clicked on all cylinders. Everybody's on the same page. That's a scary matchup, and for Pittsburgh, who limped into the playoffs, to be honest, that's a tough matchup right out of the start, and they have not done well against the Metropolitan this year, and especially against the New York Rangers. I believe the Rangers were 3-0-1 in the season series. But the slate's wiped clean. Don't be surprised if the Penguins give the Rangers a scare.
Yeah, the biggest question going into this series is which Penguins will show up, because the Penguins of the past 9 or 10 games have been faltering. They won like 2 of the last 7, give or take, against the Sharks, a non-playoff team, and the Buffalo Sabres, the worst team in the league. And they were missing 3 of their best defensemen, Ole Mata, Tristan Tang, and Derek Pouliot. So looking at the stats, you have a team that I think they are on a bad swing of bad puck luck right now. They haven't been scoring goals from any of their wingers. The only players who can have really lit the net up have been Sidney Crosby and Brandon Sutter, with Patrick Hornquist getting in front of the net and giving goalies a rough time. But I think he'll have a good presence there. But if the rest of the supporting cast of the Penguins don't show up, this will be a very short series.
I'm going to have to agree with both of you guys. I think you guys both made some really, really good points. I do like the Rangers in this series, but like you said, Mike, I think the Penguins can definitely give them a scare. The Penguins, they're an experienced team at this time of the year. They did, just get into the playoffs on the last day, but I look for them to give a good effort in this series. I think it will be a good series. But like you said, Ben, the Penguins are going to need scoring from guys other than Crosby and Malkin and Sutter of late if they want to have any shot beating the New York Rangers in the first round. And like you said, Mike, with Christian Ehrhoff coming back, that's a big plus for them on the blue line. They've really been depleted there the last couple of weeks of the season now. So I think it's going to be really important for them to just play as a unit, keep their composure. We've seen them lose that composure at times and take stupid penalties with a team like the New York Rangers and their offensive skill. They're going to make them play. They're going to make them pay on the power play. So I think for them, it's going to be just like I said, playing as a unit, keeping composure, and getting production from guys other than Crosby and Malkin.
And I think for Pittsburgh, the X factor for beating the New York Rangers is execution. You have to bury your chances, and they haven't been able to do that. With the exception of Sidney Crosby and Brandon Sutter, you have to bury your chances against Henrik Lundqvist. Otherwise, the Rangers will shut you down. And the defense, I believe they're the only team that's 3rd in goals for and also 3rd in goals against, like top 5 in each category. So that's a dangerous mixture, but I believe Pittsburgh can push this to 6 games. But I think the Rangers will beat them in 6 games.
Yeah, you absolutely took the words right out of my mouth, Goose, about how balanced New York is, not only on offense, but on defense as well. And Henrik Lundqvist, healthy, and he's playing the best hockey he's played all season long. And Penguins fans have been a little bit fickle towards their team and maybe booing the team, not so happy with them. It certainly hasn't been for a lack of effort. Sometimes the injuries and things like that. Sometimes you just get bad puck luck as well, and they have not been able to convert on that. But we'll see what happens when you wipe the slate clean. Penguins and the Rangers should be a lot of fun. These two teams no stranger to one another. But let's go ahead and look at the next matchup in the Eastern Conference that pits the Washington Capitals against the New York Islanders in what promises to be one of the funnest series to watch, at least in my opinion. Washington comes in with the leading goal scorer in the National Hockey League in Alexander Ovechkin. It should be a lot of fun. New York looks to give the fans on Long Island one last go-around before they move to Brooklyn. So who wins this series and what should be a very competitive matchup?
I can remember sitting in the other part of the studio in, I believe, September, and we were previewing the NHL season, and I said, it's going to take a miracle for Barry Trotz to get Alexander Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals to change what they did. And they did. They're a much better defensive team. They're not as loose in the defensive area of their game. And credit the free agent signings. Matt Niskanen and Brooks Orpik really shored up those defensive woes. And Alex Ovechkin, a plus player this year, not getting caught at the, I believe he's a plus player, not getting caught at the bad end of the plus-minus spectrum. Mm-hmm. And for New York, I think this series is, they wanted home ice for this one because Long Island, Nassau Coliseum, when that gets rocking, it's a very dangerous place to play. But they're limping into the playoffs. They've lost a couple games in a row. They're not executing. Their goaltending has not been very good. They're not defending very well. In order for New York to win this series, they have to get at least one of the first 2 games in Washington. That's going to be difficult. Braden Holtby's playing well, and the whole team in Washington is playing well. Going to be interesting. I think this is going to go 7. I think the Islanders will win this series, but it could go either way. I'm not confident in that pick whatsoever. It could go either way.
I think I'm going to give the edge to the Washington Capitals, the home team this series, because of their whole transformation they had from being an offensively first, shoot first, just score team to the Barry Trotz-led, just settle things down and just play the game their way. When you have New York Islanders backed by Yaroslav Halak, a former Montreal Canadian who gave the Penguins troubles and had a miracle run in the playoffs a couple years ago, you can see him probably stealing a couple of games from the Capitals, but depending on which Halak shows up, because he gave up a couple goals at the end of the last 2 or 3 games of the season that he could definitely want back. Like, he blew some of those games. One of them was against the Flyers. 3 seconds left, and he allowed up the game-winning goal. So it depends on which Halak shows up in this series. If he can help out the Islanders defensively, because they have Nick Leddy and who else?
Johnny Boychuk.
These great free agent signings from the offseason helped turn the Islanders' season around from missing playoffs last year to come back this year as a 3rd seed in the Metropolitan Division. I feel like they're not going to win against the Capitals, but they will give them a good run, take them to 7 games, and just lose out in the Verizon Center at home.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a heck of a series, like you guys said. I'm going to have to agree with you, Ben. I do like Washington in this series. I think New York is a fantastic hockey team, but they really have struggled the past couple weeks here. Yaroslav Halak in particular. But I do like Washington. I think Barry Trotz's new system that he's implemented has really just worked wonders for them. They've been playing really well at both ends of the ice. Braden Holtby in particular, Alexander Ovechkin, like you said, Mike, and Josh also the leading goal scorer in the NHL. If he can stay hot here, I think it's going to be a tough defensive effort for the New York Islanders, even with Nick Leddy and Johnny Boychuk, who have both had good years. I also think it's going to go 7 games, but I do like Washington, especially with that home ice advantage. And I think they can definitely make some noise in the playoffs moving forward if they can get this one under their belt against a good Islanders team.
Yeah. Especially with John Tavares, too, who scored 2nd in the overall point scoring lead, just missing by 1 point to Jamie Benn, who had a terrific end of the season and ended up getting wrist surgery to end it all, too.
I think it all depends if the Islanders can roll 4 lines deep, if they can get all 4 lines clicking. Because against Washington, who has a solid top 6 and bottom 6, you can't take nights off with that. Don't trust the Islanders' bottom 6. They got to get prepared and they have to be ready to go from 1 to 7 if it goes that long.
No question about it. And both of these teams could make some noise in the playoffs. They just have to get through this first round. In a series this close, I'm looking at the special teams edge. When you look at the Washington Capitals, one of the best power plays in the entire league.
Don't put Ovi on the power play.
Yeah.
Don't ever put Ovechkin on the power play. That slap shot from the left circle. Ooh.
Yeah. I think he leads the NHL in goals, and he has 20 plus on the power play. You talk about him being a plus player. You don't get the pluses for the power play, but you just see how effective Alexander Ovechkin has been. So it should be a lot of fun. Washington does have that extra home game, Game 7, if it were to go to that point. But let's look at one of the biggest Cinderellas in the National Hockey League this year, making it into the playoffs. The Ottawa Senators, they will take on the Montreal Canadiens, led by Carey Price. The Canadiens have been very good all year long, but they've kind of flown under the radar. At least it seems that way to me. Ottawa, on the other hand, as I said, a Cinderella story. They've gotten a lot of coverage for a team that wasn't even supposed to make the playoffs. I didn't have them in the playoffs, but the youth movement, led by their goaltender and some of their young guns, have propelled Ottawa to the playoffs. This should be another fantastic series. So who comes out victorious in this battle north of the border, Montreal and Ottawa?
It's just amazing what a coaching change can do. They fired Paul McLean. I believe he was the first head coach fired this season in the NHL in 2014-15. And they just turned it on. They were 18 points behind Boston in early February, and they went 21-3-3 over the next 2 months. It's just been phenomenal, and you have to give credit to Andrew Hammond for coming up from Binghamton, where he did not have stellar numbers. He gets put in a situation that no one would envy, and he took the ball and ran with it. I believe he's finished 19-1-3 maybe over the course of his start in Ottawa. And of course, you can't mention Ottawa and not mention Mark Stone, Mike Hoffman, and Mika Zibanejad, because after Jason Spezza got traded, none of us had Ottawa making the playoffs, and they just picked up the slack. Stone made his case for the Calder, but switching over to Montreal, it's all going to hinge on whether Max Pacioretty's healthy. By the looks of it, he's not going to be ready to go for Game 1. But when you compare the two teams, Montreal and Ottawa, Montreal is a stronger team because they've been there before. Most of the Ottawa Senators have not been there before. Ottawa will give Montreal a scare. I think it's going to go 6 games. Montreal will win because of experience and, of course, Carey Price. He's going to win a Vezina Trophy this year. You're not going to fail with Carey Price in that.
I'm picking them as the upset, I think. I'm picking Ottawa to take Montreal Canadiens to 7 games and ultimately beating them at home at the Bell Center and upsetting the first team overall in the Atlantic Division. Because how hot this team has been in this past 2 or 3 months. They've gone on an incredible run, beating out almost all expectations. I didn't have them picked as a playoff team. I had them middle of the pack, for 15, 16 or so, just edging out of it. But I did not have them, have this whole team just, swell up and just be powerful and have a whole team, a city behind them. The Hamburglar is a fantastic, different, story they have because they have players just, they're throwing hamburgers onto the ice and have players coming out there and just eating them.
They're excited. They're excited in Ottawa.
So while it's not necessarily a matter of skill, but it's the NHL playoffs. Anything can happen. And I feel like that if there's a team this year that will have an upset, it'll be the Ottawa Senators.
I like Montreal in this series. I think, like you said, Josh, they've kind of flown under the radar a bit, but they've been a solid hockey team all year long. I think maybe a way for them to be forgotten is they really didn't make any huge moves like the New York Rangers did, leading the Metropolitan Division. They brought in guys like Sergei Gonchar and Devontae Smith-Pelly from the Anaheim Ducks. And other than that, they really didn't bring in any big-name players. I think that's kind of a reason that maybe they have flown under the radar. But like I said, they've been solid all year long. Carey Price has been the best goaltender in the National Hockey League this year. I think with him backstopping, I don't think Ottawa's going to be able to beat them. I think Ottawa's a terrific story, though. You talk about coming on strong in the second half of the season. Ottawa's a perfect example of that. Just like you guys, I didn't have them anywhere near the playoffs coming into this season. They really turned it on, and like you said, Mike, they're really excited up there in Ottawa, and they should be. They've got a young, good hockey team who I think the sky's the limit for. They're only going to get better. But that being said, I do like Montreal just because of the experience and obviously Carey Price. They've been solid all year. I look forward to continue in this first-round matchup.
No question about it. And Ben, you had talked about some of the things that Ottawa does, throwing hamburgers out on the ice, all this fun stuff. I would call it youthful enthusiasm, really, when you look at it. A lot of young guys, and they have a lot of fun. They're really enjoying it. And no matter what happens for the Ottawa Senators, this is going to be a learning experience, whether they win the first round, whether they lose in the first round, whether they win the Stanley Cup. This is just going to propel them to the next step with this young core of players. It's a lot of guys that were relative unknowns coming in, no superstar kind of can't-miss prospects, but they've all really just done their job, and it should be a lot of fun north of the border, Montreal and Ottawa. But let's go ahead and move on to the final matchup here in the Eastern Conference. That pits the Detroit Red Wings, who have made the playoffs for 24 straight years, against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Guys, I think they have one of the best core of forwards, a lot of depth at the forward position do the Tampa Bay Lightning have in this matchup here. So Detroit, Tampa Bay, who wins this series, final series here in the eastern side of the bracket?
It's new guard versus old guard. The Detroit Red Wings have been at this for a very long time. It's been there, done that for them. Henrik Zetterberg, Pavel Datsyuk, and Nicholas Kronwall, Stanley Cup champions in their own right. For Tampa Bay, some of these guys, a lot of them don't have Stanley Cups to their name. They're relatively inexperienced when it comes to the playoffs. Leave out maybe Ryan Callahan. Steven Stamkos has been there before. But when you compare the two teams, it's whose offense is going to click and whose offense is going to get the job done. And you have to lean towards Tampa Bay. Nikita Kucherov, just a fantastic year. Andre Palat, I think the line of Johnson, Palat, and Kucherov, 60 points. Each one has over 60 points.
Triplets line.
Yeah, the triplets line.
Yeah.
There you go. And ultimately, what does the playoffs come down to? Is goaltending. You have Ben Bishop at one end, Peter Mrazek at the other. Mike Babcock has to decide between Jimmy Howard and Peter Mrazek. He's going to go with Mrazek in Game 1, but who's to say Mrazek doesn't get torched in Game 1? I don't trust Detroit. I think they're a little too old right now. They're in a rebuild-esque type mode where they have some young guys that are ready, like Gustav Nyquist, Thomas Tatar, but they have some guys there that just could maybe move on. Detroit just not going to get it done this year. I think Tampa Bay is going to win this one. It's not going to be easy. I think it's going to be 6 games, but it's going to be a quick 6 games, if you will.
True.
I'm with you there on that one, Goose. Yeah, I'm picking 6 games for Tampa Bay. This is a battle of Steve Yzerman, because he played for the Detroit Red Wings back in the 90s, and now he's the GM of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and in his 5 years he's been there, he's built a team up and that can compete. Like with Steve Stamkos and the triplets line, Victor Hedman, all those guys, Ben Bishop, acquired from trades. They can play hockey. They can just skate circles around, I think, this slowing down Detroit defense, because the Detroit team is getting older now, because you have Henrik Zetterberg in his 30s. Pavel Datsyuk, as fantastic a player as he is on the other side of 35 at this point. Nicholas Kronwall is a hard hitter as he is. He's also just getting slower. And on top of the goalie controversy, too, I just don't think Detroit can hang with the Lightning for very long.
I'm going to have to agree, make it 3 in a row. I'm picking Tampa Bay in 6. Detroit's a good hockey team, but like you said, they're getting older. I think, to be honest, if you look at the standings towards the end of the season, I think it was either which aging team is going to get in. Is it going to be Detroit or Boston? Boston is a little bit younger, but yes, they're kind of on the decline. Maybe a little bit less than where Detroit is. I think it's going to be a good series, but the young guns in Tampa Bay are just phenomenal. They've had tremendous years. Tyler Johnson, Kucherov, Andre Palat, like you guys had mentioned. And then, of course, when you've got Steven Stamkos up there ripping one-timers on the power play, that's
dangerous stuff.
Exactly. And I think that's definitely going to play a huge factor in it to get Stamkos going. I think it's them scoring goals is going to be huge, especially with the controversy that Detroit's got right now in between the pipes. I think their youth helps them win this series. And yeah, I really like Tampa Bay. They've played good all year long. They've played well all year long. I look for them to continue to do so. Ben Bishop going to have a big series, I think. So we'll have to see how that one goes, but I'm liking Tampa Bay.
Yeah, when you look at Detroit, obviously making the playoffs is no feat. It's certainly a good accomplishment, but they started the season really well. When I look at them, I think their play has been trending downwards a little bit heading into the playoffs, so they're not really going in on a high note. not really riding any momentum, so we'll see if they can recapture it, defeat Tampa Bay. No easy task for the Detroit Red Wings. But guys, let's close out this half of the segment. We've previewed each of the first-round matchups in the Eastern Conference, but now let's go through and get your predictions for who will win the Eastern Conference Final and represent the East in the Stanley Cup.
Well, my Eastern Conference Final is Tampa Bay and New York. I think New York will get to the Eastern Conference Final, but when they run into a team like Tampa Bay, where they have not had any success this season, I just think Tampa Bay is going to come out victorious. They're inexperienced in the playoffs, I know, but with that firepower and how good Ben Bishop can be, I just think the offense is going to be too much for the New York defense. I think Tampa Bay is going to win the East and go to the Stanley Cup Finals.
I have the exact same matchup as you, but I'm taking the Rangers in this one, I think. I feel like this is the year Henrik Lundqvist will finally take home the gold, or I guess the silver.
The silver.
He's taken home the gold before in the Olympics. But yeah, I feel like they're a more complete team than the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they'll win.
My Eastern Conference Finals is going to be the New York Rangers and the Montreal Canadiens. I think if there was any way for Carey Price to play better than he has this season, I think it's going to be in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. I think he stands on his head. I think they ride him all the way into the Eastern Conference Finals. I think it goes 7 games in the Eastern Conference Finals, but I do like New York in 7 to go on to the Stanley Cup. Like I said, it's all about Carey Price. If they can ride him and score goals in front of him, I think Montreal can get there no problem. And obviously New York, with all the talent that they've brought in at the deadline in particular, I think they're really hungry for it this year after a good cup run last year that ended in defeat to the LA Kings. I think New York-Montreal is going to be a really, really good series if it can happen in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, litany of combinations for the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm sure whichever one we get, it'll be a fantastic series, no doubt about it. But guys, I hope you're not tired yet. I want you to sit tight because we're going to take a break and come back and break down the Western Conference here in the NHL playoffs. The push to the playoffs is on, and we will preview the Western Conference when we return right here on The Big Hit. And welcome back into the Big Hit, ladies and gentlemen. So happy you've joined us for part 2 of our NHL playoff preview. We had a great discussion in part 1 as we talked about the Eastern Conference and the first round matchups. Many of the guys had the New York Rangers winning the Eastern Conference, and we're back here with the same crew: Mike Gosnell, Ben Snyder, Sean Fritz. Guys, let's begin with one of the biggest storylines from the Western Conference, and it actually features a team not in the playoffs this year. The Los Angeles Kings, the reigning, defending Stanley Cup champions, unable to make the playoffs. Did this shock you that the Kings were not able to get into the Stanley Cup playoffs because they've been able to sneak in and they've really made some good runs over the past few years?
It is surprising when you see a Daryl Sutter coach team with that much talent not make the playoffs. But I think it's just a testament to how good the Western Conference has been and how good Calgary and Winnipeg have been. LA just couldn't get it done down the stretch, and when it came time to go to Calgary and beat a team that's clearly not as talented as LA is right now, if you really want to look at it, they couldn't get the job done. I mean, it's not surprising anymore. I mean, if you can't get the job done, you don't deserve to be there.
True.
Calgary and Winnipeg have gotten the job done over the course of the season. LA hasn't, and therefore the Kings are not in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yep, Operation Regicide was a success for the Western Conference. The Kings have come to the playoffs many years. They won the Cup twice in 3 years, and now they're out because they have a mostly complete team since last year. They only lost a couple players, but it's all but down to execution. Like, even the team that some of them say it was arguably the most possessive, based team, just couldn't do it. And I'm at a loss for words here because I had them going to the playoffs, but it just didn't happen.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. I think you guys make good points. I think the most surprising thing for me is kind of like what you said, Ben. The amount of players they brought back from last year's team, and also guys that were on last year's team that were on the team in 2012 that won it. I think it's surprising that they couldn't find a way, especially when we've seen them get hot so many times in the past. Like you said, Mike, down the stretch that they just weren't able to do it. And they did struggle on the road this year a lot, which I think half your game's on the road. If you're struggling on the road, that's going to be tough to keep piling up wins and to really get hot at a certain point in the season. But yeah, I think it's definitely surprising. I definitely had them in at the beginning of the season, especially with all those guys that they were bringing back. Jonathan Quick is a tremendous goaltender, but they just weren't able to find a way to do it this year. So I think it'll be good though for Calgary and Winnipeg to get in and kind of get their feet wet a little bit, see some new faces in there, which will be fun to watch.
Yeah, and both of those teams, Calgary and Winnipeg, certainly deserve the distinction to be in the playoffs. So the Kings no longer Stanley Cup champions, so you can remove that crown, and there we go. Kings no longer in the Stanley Cup playoffs, at least for this year. Maybe next year, but that's a long ways away. We've got some Western Conference matchups to preview, and let's talk about the Winnipeg Jets and their impending showdown with the Anaheim Ducks. Winnipeg getting into the playoffs for the first time since they returned north of the border to Winnipeg. Playoff tickets selling out in less than 5 minutes. Gushu said before we came on, over 13,000 season ticket holders for the Winnipeg Jets. One of the greatest fan bases in hockey, always travel well. How significant for this franchise would it be if Winnipeg would be able to upset the Anaheim Ducks, the #1 seed in the West?
Don't put it past them either. They can absolutely do it. With Anaheim's green defense and their rather unproven goaltending, it's an absolute possibility that the Winnipeg Jets can upset the Anaheim Ducks. It'd be huge, I think. Win, lose, or draw, even though there's no more ties in hockey, they're going to stick by their team. It's a Canadian city. Come on now. But they're just so happy that to have their Winnipeg Jets back. They're selling out buildings every night. It's going to be a Winnipeg whiteout for the first time, I believe, since 1993 when the original franchise moved to Phoenix, Arizona. I'm very happy for their fans. I'm happy there's playoff hockey to be played in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I don't think they're going to beat the Anaheim Ducks, but don't put it past them. I think if Winnipeg does, and the only way they can do it is if they just play the way they have been. They don't have anything to lose. They made the playoffs. They're taking strides the way they needed to. They needed to make the playoffs this year to really advance their development and keep those fans believing. They have nothing to lose, and that's a dangerous team when you come to the playoffs.
Yeah, as you said, they have nothing to lose, and they've played well down the stretch. I really don't pick Andre Pavelec as like one of the premier goaltenders of the league, but he's turned it up this past season. He's just he's never been really that good for me. At least even playing him as an NHL game series, he never he's just been a terrible goaltender for me, but with the help of Dustin Byfuglien, Andrew Ladd, and those guys, he's managed to turn it around and get them a good playoff spot and have a good, solid wild card spot, edging over the Kings in this situation. I feel like they're not going to win this series. They'll take it to 6 games probably, but they can win it though. They have what it takes to beat the Ducks.
I also like the Ducks in 6, but like you said, Mike, with their kind of controversy and unproven goaltenders in Anaheim, this is definitely the type of team to do it. They've got good veteran leadership and guys like Andrew Ladd and Dustin Byfuglien. I think, the front office up in Winnipeg really proved this year at the deadline that they wanted to go into the playoffs and didn't want to just settle on being on the outside looking in when they got Tyler Myers and Drew Stafford in the Evander Kane trade from Buffalo. 2 guys who have a little bit of playoff experience in their careers. I like this Winnipeg team a lot, and they're excited up there in Winnipeg, and rightfully so. I think anytime, like you said, a Canadian team is in it, they just go wild. This is their sport. This is what they live for their team to get into the postseason. I think it's going to be a good series. I do like the Ducks in 6. I think they've just got a little bit more talent and skill than Winnipeg does, but I do like Winnipeg going forward, especially with guys like Ladd and Byfuglien leading them. Pavelic's played well this year too, so I think it's good experience for them to get their feet wet this year. But I do like Anaheim overall, though.
Yeah, and I'd like to take this opportunity now to put the Anaheim Ducks on upset alert, because I really feel this could be a series. If there is one upset in the Stanley Cup playoffs, I really think this could be the one. I really like what Winnipeg has done getting into the playoffs. As you said, nothing to lose. Can just go out there, play with house money, so to speak. But let's look at the second matchup here that we're going to discuss. The Vancouver Canucks Calgary Flames could be one of the most intense competitive series in the playoffs. Another battle north of the border, so Canada really a well-represented country here in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Who wins this series between Calgary and Vancouver?
Talk about a team with nothing to lose. Calgary. I mean, no one had Calgary making the playoffs. I mean, they're rebuilding and they're light years ahead of where they should be right now. They should be where Buffalo is. They're still in the rebuilding phase of their team, but give credit to Brian Burke, give credit to Brad Trevelling, their GM, of drafting the right players. Sean Monahan, Johnny Gaudreau, who just lit it up in Calgary. And when Mark Giordano went down, many wrote them off, but they just picked themselves up, dusted themselves off, and say, "Okay, boys, we got to get this done." And they just soldiered on, and they got into the playoffs. That's a dangerous team that Vancouver has to face. And this is my upset pick. I think Calgary's going to get it and get it done in 6 games. They're hot, nothing to lose, and just immensely talented up front. Not just Sean Monahan and Johnny Gaudreau. Yuri Hoodler's there as well. Backlund is there as well. The defense without Giordano hurts, of course, but with Hiller in net, who's a much better option than Eddie Lack, I believe, that's in net for Vancouver. I think this is Calgary's series in 6 games.
I don't think they're going to win against Vancouver, but they will take them to 5 or 6 games, I feel like. Because of who will probably win the Calder Trophy this year, Johnny Gaudreau, I think what he's brought to the table for Calgary has been fantastic. Because I had them in the runnings for the Connor McDavid sweepstakes this year. I had them like second to last place almost. But for them to turn the season around, finish up in the playoff spot, and try to contend with the Vancouver Canucks, I feel like that's a massive bump for the city. It's fantastic for Calgary, fantastic for Canada. And at least with this situation, they'll have at least one Canadian team making it out of the playoffs and out of the first round.
I'm going to have to agree with you, Mike. I really like Calgary right now. I think they're hot. 2 guys that you have to mention when you talk about Calgary is Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Monahan. 2 young players who've had tremendous seasons. Jonas Hiller and net, obviously, like Mike touched on. I was one of those people who had them, falling off once their captain and top defenseman Mark Giordano went down. But I mean, they've just kept it rolling all season, at least the second half, anyways. I think they're a heck of a hockey team. They're young. They still got a lot of work to do, but I really think that they definitely have a great shot at beating Vancouver. I think they take that shot. I think they beat them in 7 games. But yeah, overall, I really like Calgary right now. I think I don't have them, getting much further into the playoffs than the Western Conference semifinals. But I think it'll be a good story for them just to, get a playoff series win under their belt.
Yeah, that series should be a lot of fun. I know we're all looking forward to that. We still got a couple more matchups left as we run low on time, so we'll speed it up a little bit here. We've got the St. Louis Blues and the Minnesota Wild. Minnesota wondering if they have enough left in the tank after what has been a grueling season. A lot of people like St. Louis, so who wins in this showdown, Minnesota and the St. Louis Blues?
St. Louis, because I don't trust Devin Dubnyk. He's had a fantastic year, don't get me wrong. You don't want to discredit what he's done. Mike Yeo really should have been fired after what Pittsburgh did to them, 7-2, I believe, in console. They stuck with them. They got a goaltender that is well-traveled, very unproven, and not really highly respected. Devin Dubnyk turned it up, and he went to work and got Minnesota into the playoffs. But you're going up against a team that's one of the more complete teams in the league in St. Louis.
Yeah.
I give it 5 games. It's going to be the Blues. They're just too powerful.
You have guys coming back from injury for St. Louis, like David Backes and those guys. I think they're just going to take it to Minnesota. You have Zach Parise, Ryan Suter on the team, but I think they just did all they could to get back into the playoff picture, back from their horrendous midseason ending. I think just at this point in time, they just did all they could. And Devin Dubnyk, while he's going to probably steal a game or 2 in the series, he's not going to be able to hold off the battering rams of the St. Louis Blues.
I'm going to have to agree with both of you guys again. I think St. Louis is, a really, really good hockey team. They've proved that all season long. And I think they've got a bit of an X factor this year in Vladimir Tarasenko. He had some depth up front for them. He's a heck of a hockey player. He's put up some really good numbers this year offensively. But I really do like Minnesota. I have St. Louis winning it in 6, but I like the pieces that they do have in Minnesota. Like you said, Zach Parise, Ryan Suter. Devin Dubnyk's played phenomenal this year. But overall, I think St. Louis kind of just keeps it together and is able to fend them off, if you will, in 6 games.
Personally, when I've been a fan of St. Louis for the last couple of years, I really thought they would take a step in advance in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Has not happened yet. We'll see if this is the year for St. Louis to make a run, but we'll look at our final first-round matchup here in the Western Conference. That is Chicago and Nashville. Patrick Kane hopes to be back for Game 1 against the Predators here. He was injured for most of the season, but how much do you believe this injury affects Chicago's chances of making a deep run into the playoffs? Obviously, a healthy Patrick Kane is much better than not, but you have to look, is there rust or anything like that with Patrick Kane?
Patrick Kane's playing game one. They've already come out and said that he's cleared for contact, and I believe he will be in the lineup for game one against Nashville. And if that's the case, then Chicago, there's no rust. They know what to do. They've been there before. Put Nashville on upset alert. This is not going to be pretty for Nashville. I think Nashville can win this series, and they very well could. In 7 games, in a 7-game series, it's very hard for any team to beat Chicago. I think Nashville gets upset, if you will, because this wouldn't be an upset at all.
Yeah.
Chicago in 7.
Yeah, you had two very similar teams going into the playoffs right here. They both kind of stumbled into the playoffs. They didn't have really good months of March and April to end things off, but with the return of Patrick Kane, he's just an X factor. He will score on you, and he will do it in style. So I feel like Pekka Rinne can't stop Patrick Kane. He can't stop Jonathan Toews, and they're not going to win this series. 6 games probably.
I like Chicago in 7. Like you said, Mike, when you get to a 7th game with Chicago, they're an experienced team who's done it before. They've won 2 Stanley Cups in the past couple of seasons. I think it gets off to an interesting start, though. I think Nashville kind of hops out of the gate just because Chicago, trying to get back into the swing of things with Patrick Kane back in the lineup. And like you said, Ben, they both have struggled of recently, getting into the playoffs. But I do like Chicago. I think they hang on and then get it to a 7th game where they just do what they do best, and that's win. And I think, with Patrick Kane coming back, it's, as we just talked about St. Louis, I don't think that's something that they want to be hearing down there in St. Louis. I think that's been, a big, hump for them is that they're trying to get over is to beat Chicago in the playoffs. I think that'll be an interesting series if Chicago can win this one and then meet up with St. Louis next series.
Yeah, so many people had Nashville as favorites early on, considering their start, but with Chicago, ever so dangerous, no matter what seed they are. Could be like the LA Kings. It could be an 8 seed, and they'll still make a run with Johnny Toews and Patrick Kane. But let's look at this Western Conference as a whole. Who do you have in the Western Conference final, and who is representing the West for the Stanley Cup this year?
Went back and forth on this one. I'm usually at Anaheim, but after giving it some consideration, I would pick St. Louis. I think they will get past Chicago. A complete team will go up against Tampa Bay. St. Louis.
I'm going chalk on this one. Ducks and St. Louis, with St. Louis winning. I guess it's not really chalk in that case, but St. Louis will win over Anaheim in the conference finals and face New York in the Cup finals.
I think it's going to be Anaheim and Chicago. I've been saying it for the past couple of weeks. I really like this Anaheim team. I know that they have a bit of a controversy in net, but I just think that this is a year that with Patrick Kane coming back like this, maybe Chicago does struggle a little bit. I know we're so accustomed to seeing them win at this time of the year, but I think that they do get beat by St. Louis, like we were just talking about. I think it's going to be St. Louis and Anaheim in the Western Conference Finals. But I do like Anaheim out of the West. I like them in 7 games against St. Louis. Yeah, and real quick, as we run low on time and the show as well, who is your Stanley Cup champion for this year? Let's get your predictions on tape right now.
Tampa Bay Lightning in 7 games over the St. Louis Blues.
Okay.
Rangers over Blues, 7 games.
I like the New York Rangers over the Anaheim Ducks in 6 games.
Should be a lot of fun in the NHL playoffs. That's all the time we have here for the Big Hit. We'd like to thank everybody behind the scenes, everybody in our control room running the graphics. No matter what you're doing, we'd like to let you know to follow us on Twitter for all of the latest updates, to subscribe to us on YouTube as well. For director Michael Mattingly Martone, Kyle Condor, and Malusi Kitchen are our producers, and we will leave you with a tweet from our very own Mike Gosnell. We'll see you next time right here on The Big Hit.